What is happening? Hello, hello. Ross O'Loughlin here, coming at you live. And today we're going to be talking about the game plan call, right? Game plan call, very simply, is the system that we use here at Conversion Engineering that I help all my clients implement when they're basically trying to sell stuff over the phone, right? If you've got some sort of education program or online course or coaching program or some sort of involved service that's kind of done with you, amazing way to sell is over the phone. It's not something that I think a lot of people really consider enough, particularly because these days, particularly online, everyone is just kind of how do you say, indoctrinated into the belief system that the thing that you should be aiming for the most is essentially sending email campaigns or one-way ads and just get people to put the money in the drawer and we'll slide it through and we won't talk to you. We don't have to look at you. We have to do nothing. You just send the money to us and we'll send the product to you. And what I can see the appeal in that for a lot of my clients, they're missing out on a huge opportunity. And I noticed that a few years ago because for a lot of folks, they could take the same experience, skill level, um, information, knowledge, expertise. And if you just sold it to the right person, if you just got in front of them and customized the sales conversation to them and stretched the gap for them to show them how far away they are from getting what they want, you could charge a premium, right? You could charge a premium versus what you would normally charge if you put it in just a click on the sales page and buy it when you're ready sort of way, right? That's not to say you can't charge high ticket prices and sell off a sales page. Of course you can, right? That's what I did for the longest time, was helping people charge high ticket prices, selling through the internet on sales pages. But it's also something that you need to be really good at. And what I have found is that if you get good at selling on the phone, number one, you can charge more, but also number two, you can really, really get the guts of what you need to craft a compelling sales message. And that's what I want to talk about today, right? Is what is the best way for you to be able to sell on the phone? If you don't want to be coming across like a slimy, sleazy scumbag, right? Like we've all been on the phone with salespeople that are very pushy, not very how would you say, like their style isn't very congruent to how we want to show up and interface and interact and sell with our clients. So what's the best way to be able to sell on the phone without being like a douchebag that converts really well and allows you to charge a premium, or what I would like to say is allows you to charge for the value that your expertise, information, and coaching actually can generate for someone, right? And how do we get them to show up in a way that they're really excited to work with you, right? That's one of the more important parts. And that's what the game plan call is all about, which is what we're going to be diving into today. With the reason we have a picture of Frodo and Gandalf here is because the analogy I like to use when I'm talking about sales is essentially that you are Gandalf. In your business, you are Gandalf, and Frodo is the prospect, right? Frodo's the person that's going on the adventure. You're the guide, you're the helper that's helping them get there. And the best analogy that I can think of is that you are showing up and essentially you are getting them excited to go on the adventure with you, right? You're saying, hey, here's what we got to do. Here's where we got to get to, right? And here's how we're going to do it. Isn't this where you want to go and what you want to do? Fantastic. Let's get rocking. And then Frodo's running out of the Shire saying, I'm going on an adventure, right? And that's really the environment that we want to create. Because what we don't want is to create an environment where we're like pushing people to buy, right? Pushing is not a good sales strategy. It can be effective in certain markets with certain personalities. I just don't like it personally. And I don't think it creates happy, excited customers. And oftentimes, if you're a pushy salesperson or your sales strategy involves a lot of those high pressure push techniques, you end up with high refund rates and people that are kind of regretful later on down the line. And they're like, the marketing got me on that one. That's not what I want in my business. I want people that are excited, engaged, coming in and knocking it out. And that's what the game plan call is all about. Create an environment where people are excited to come into your world, right? So promise of what we're talking about here is convert more clients at a higher price with less pressure using a simple two-part sales call system. If you missed part one, I'll link to it below. Essentially, first part of the sales call system is a QA call, which again, you play the role of Gandalf, where you are the quality assurance individual in your business, the qualification insurance individual in your business. Or you're going to say, look at the prospects coming in, and you're going to say, you pass or you shall not pass, right? And the purpose there is that you're only getting on the phone with people who are qualified prospects. And if they are qualified, then you're going to map out what the adventure is going to look like with them, by diagnosing the problem, as we'll talk about here in a minute, and creating a plan to get it done. But we use two calls essentially. First part is a QA call, and the second part then is the game plan call, which is what we're talking about today, right? A little just hat tip here to the reference sources. These are the people that probably have had the biggest influence on me as I've learned to sell on the phone. On the left there, Rick Roberge, he was like my first sales coach. He's the guy who set the kind of sales culture and trained the initial sales team at HubSpot, a massive software company. Worked with him back when I used to work in the software space back in the day. Tacky Moore, guy in the middle there, he's a legend from down under. Amazing when it comes to selling, coaching, and consulting. Learned a lot about the two-part call from him. And then last but not least, Ramit Sethi, who I've learned a lot about when it comes to the consultative selling approach, which is very much about how you play the role of the consultant and ask questions to determine what it is that needs to be worked on in the client's world, and then positioning yourself as the premium consultant / person that's going to help them solve the problem. So a lot of input from the three of them here, and just want to say, like, my system here is tying what I've learned from the three of them into one space, right? So let's talk about the problem. What is the problem when it comes to selling on the phone, right? Particularly when it comes to the sales call itself. That moment where you're on the phone with the person and you're like, yo, I know that you want to buy something, or you've got a problem, I should say. I want you to buy something. I know you've got a problem that you want to have solved, right? Like, we're clearly both are in the same position to be moving in the same direction together. But how do we run that call in a way where you both get what you want, right? You get a new client, a new customer, some money in the bank account from a person that's interested and excited to join your course or your program, and they are getting a customized solution that they feel fits exactly what they're looking for, right? That's what we're talking about. The call where we're going to be talking about what it is they need, what it is you have, and then getting the money out on the table and saying, are we going ahead? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about a sales call, and we're talking about the game plan call here. So what is the problem in that situation? Well, in my experience, first of all, push and pressure doesn't work, very simply, right? Push and pressure doesn't work at all. It can work for some people, doesn't work for me. I'm not that style of person, and if I try to use those tactics, it feels weird, right? But also, whenever you push, you always get pushed back, right? And if you're in the position where you were constantly pushing people into your offers, into your programs, it's just not, you're going to get a lot of pushback, and you're going to get a lot of resistance. It might not suit your style. And also, there are tactical problems that come with that sort of strategy if you are trying to be a high pressure salesperson, right? But at the same time, oftentimes you probably can be on those calls and you don't get a decision, right? The person's kind of dragging their feet, they're humming and like, oh, I'm not sure. And the call doesn't really go anywhere, right? You don't get a yes or a no, right? Rick Roberge, the guy I mentioned earlier, who's involved with the sales culture at Salesforce, he always says that sales is all about asking questions and determination of fit, right? And if you ask the right questions to determine if the person's the right fit, and they conclude that they are the right fit, then there should be no reason not to make a decision and move forward. So if someone's not making a decision, most likely because they don't feel they're the right fit for your program, or that you're not the right fit to help them solve their problem, right? So if we don't get a decision, that's a problem because we've taken someone all the way through the sales process and then you're stuck in that horrible kind of follow-up mode. How about now? Anything else I can do? Just checking in, right? Like we've all kind of been there. It's not a good place to be, because they're just being polite by saying no, maybe in a couple few months, not now. I'm kind of busy. Like you just get all those excuses and push off because A, you've lost control of the sales conversation, but also B, they didn't really want the thing. They don't think you're the right fit. And honestly, they're just not saying no, either out of politeness or because they don't want to eliminate their elimination. They don't want to eliminate potential options. Um, should they not be able to find a better solution elsewhere? But right now, they don't think it's you, right? And that's often because the prospect doesn't see the value in what you're providing, and that's a big issue. Um, but often, if you're not able to run these calls well, off they drag on forever, right? You're not sure how to lead the call. The person keeps waffling and talking, but you don't want to cut across them, right? And you never really get to a place, and that's an issue, right? You never get to a place where you're both clear that like, okay, we're here to solve a problem. Let's solve the problem, right? And last but not least, a lot of my clients, they fumble the close. It's very easy to do, right? There's like every sales call kind of has a rough structure where it's like, sweet, let's talk about your situation and what you want and the problems you're solving and what you'd like the problems to look like when they're gone or what you like life to look like when the problems are gone. And then it gets to the point of like, okay, well, I understand what you're looking for. Now let's talk about me and what I have. And it's really awkward, right? Like for a lot of people that maybe don't have the experience, it's easy to not know how to talk about your own stuff, but then also B, to fumble the point when it's like, okay, so how do we actually close the deal and get the yes and get the person set up and paid, essentially, right? And that's a big issue. But what's the possibility, right? What does this stuff look like? A little close up there. What does this stuff look like when we do it right, when we do it well? What is the possibility? Well, number one, it's easy to have a very simple, low pressure conversation that ends up with conversions, right? You don't have to be piling on the pressure, and it doesn't have to be this really jarring, kind of emotionally bullying conversation that you tend to see a lot of people leaning into in the online space with all this alpha posturing of like, I'm the person that's in charge, and you're going to apply for my call, and then I'm going to show up and I'm going to tell you how it is and how much life is going to suck if you don't buy my thing. I guess it's not a very good way, I find, to build a brand and a reputation. Maybe if that's congruent with your personality, awesome. But for a lot of people, it's not. It's not going to be congruent with your brand. And that's just, what I don't want. So it's possible to do it without having to like rock the boat. It's also possible to convert nearly every sales call, right? When you run this properly, the two-part sales call, and when you know how to run the game plan call successfully, like you'll see conversion rates of 70, 80, 90%, right? Which is huge. Like I was working with a client and they had a conversion rate of 10%, 1 out of 10 calls they would close. And then they just started running the game plan sessions, and all of a sudden they're closing 75%, which is a massive increase. Again, I was talking with someone just yesterday or earlier this week, and they were closing 1 out of 15. Not a good place to be. If you're getting 15 people on the phone and you're closing one of them, like that's a lot of time to be spending trying to sell stuff, and that's not what we want. But if we get this system in place, you definitely can convert nearly every person, right? Also, when you do this well, right, clearer value, higher fees. If the person can understand how your solution is going to specifically solve the tangible problems in their world and they can connect the dots, it's like, oh, your thing's going to help me with this thing, right? All of a sudden your solution is way more valuable, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the idea of I'm going to write all this copy and it's going to be amazing and people are clearly going to see exactly what it does for them. Most people don't read your copy, right? And expecting someone who's extremely busy, a high value client, to be like reading these long form sales letters, that's not how it tends to work. But if you can clearly articulate the value that you provide or do a better job of more clearly articulating the value that you provide, it is therefore more valuable and you can charge higher fees accordingly, right? And if you do that and you get someone to say yes, you're going to see someone who's excited and energized coming into your world, just like Frodo here, right? I'm going on an adventure. Um, that's what you want to be doing when you're running these calls well, is having someone coming in with a map for a journey that they're going to go on, there and back again, and coming into your world excited to get it done, right? So, and the way we're going to do that is with the game plan call. Okay. So if you haven't already, go below this video. There should be a link where you can basically click and you can get essentially the structure of the entire call, including some suggested scripts for various parts of it. This is the same document I use when I'm running my calls for myself. It's the same document I use when I'm teaching my private clients how to run this. You can just click opt in, it's yours, and you can get a copy of it. And I'm going to walk basically through the principles that it uses. And then if you want a copy of it yourself, you can map along with the principles and see how it works, right? But the game plan call is essentially it. And let's kind of dive into the key principles here for how this works, essentially, right? Um, so number one, you want to lead with intent, right? Typically, when people are kind of showing up on a sales call and it's kind of two strangers showing up to talk about something, um, sometimes it mightn't be very clear what you're showing up to talk about. You're thinking, cool, so we're going to talk about buying my solution, right? And they're thinking, cool, so we talked about how I was going to get free help about that thing and that like I'm getting a free consultation, right? Like there's often this conflict between the expectations of what's going to happen on the call and there's conflict around uh, which direction does the call need to go, right? So what you need to learn to do, particularly in on these calls, is take leadership, right? If you're being perceived as the authority, if you're the expert that someone's coming to learn from to solve a problem, you need to be the leader. You are the one who has got the solution. You're the one who's been there a million times and said, sweet, so I just need to figure out the specifics of your situation, and then I'm just going to give you these solutions and we're good to go. But when the person gets on the call, you need to be stepping up and basically leading with intent to say, yo, so here's how this call is going to go. I have a framework. We're going to kind of get into a couple of things. We're going to do A, B, and C. And then we're going to get into X, Y, and Z. And by the end of it, you're going to have a game plan that's going to help you get to where you want to go. Does that sound good? Right? You want to be basically laying out how the call is going to go so the person at the other side doesn't feel the need to take leadership of the call and can sit back and relax and go, actually, that sounds perfect. If we can get that out of this call, I'd be really, really excited. So let's get stuck into it, right? So you need to step up and straight away take leadership of the call, because if you don't, then the other person will, right? They're trying to get something out of the call, and if they're not feeling like I'm getting what I need out of this, they're going to start butting in, they're going to start rambling, and they're going to start asking you questions, which is not what you want at all, right? You want to be the question asker, because the person the person who's asking the question is the person who's controlling the conversation. And you want to come across as an expert authority who's asking questions that is going to get the person where they need to get to, so that you both can determine if you're the right fit for the other party. Okay. So that's why step one, when the call comes on, you're going to lead with intention. You're going to see that in the workbook. You down below, the first section is basically you got to step up and start leading the call. And it's a nice little tidy script to do that. Okay. Number two, key principle, paint their vision. All right. Um, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, he's someone that is a huge influence on me. And he has a strategy that he calls the R factor question, which is all about, hey, like, where do you want to be in the future? Right? Where is it? Let's like paint the vision of where you want to be in your future for you to be happy about your progress. And when you ask that question of someone, it's often the first time in a while they've had the opportunity to think through that in detail, right? And articulate the vision for where they want to go. Okay. Painting a clear picture of a positive, hopeful future is incredibly powerful. And it's one of the strategies that Ramit Sethi teaches, Taki Moore teaches, Rick Roberge teaches, right? Like what you want to do is you want to get people excited and emotionally invigorated about the possibility of a positive future. right? Now, most people haven't clearly articulated what that picture would look like for the specific area of their life that they might be looking to get your help in. And just by making space on this call to help them articulate what that future will look like, it is incredibly valuable, right? And that's going to be a big portion of the call, is helping them clearly paint out the vision of their future. You're going to ask a bunch of questions and you're going to be like, cool, so it's going to look like this. And what about this? And talk to me about how you want this to be, right? And you're going to use your expertise to ask questions to get them to paint in the details, right? But when you do that, you're going to do this, have this massively positive effect where you're going to get them excited about the potential of having that future in their life, right? So the whole purpose of the call is getting them to dream big about what the positive vision of their future is going to look like. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to stretch the gap in 3D. What does that mean? Well, we might be familiar with the gap itself, right? The gap is kind of this idea in the world of sales where you have this person over here. Let's call him Bob. Every explainer video needs a Bob, but Bob is at point A over here and he wants to get to point B over here, right? He's at point A in his life and he wants to get to point B, right? And there is a gap between point A to point B. And the gap is what Bob wants to cross. He wants to basically no longer be at point A and he wants to be at point B. But he might not be aware how far away point A and point B are, right? In Bob's mind, point A might be over here and point B might be here. And he might be thinking, oh yeah, I just need to do A, B, and C, and all of a sudden I'll be there. But in reality, that's not the case at all, right? In reality, what point A to point B is that not only does he have one dimension that he might need to change, but what we want to look at is we want to look at the 3 dimensions in which things need to change, right? Meaning, okay, so you're here in this part of your life. Maybe in my world, this is the amount of revenue that you're generating every month. Maybe down here, this is how much time you're spending on your business. How much time do you want to be spending on your business? So maybe this is point C to point D, right? And then maybe there's another area. Maybe down here, it's this is point E to point F. And maybe what this one here is how big your email list is. Or how many offers you've got, right? There's multiple dimensions that Bob wants to change his life in. And what you want to be able to do is not just be able to look at, okay, the one dimension of going from point A to point B in this area, but the second dimension, of the how wide is this gap? How many areas, right, does this gap actually span? It's not just about changing one thing, it's about changing multiple things. Okay, so that's the second dimension that you want to stretch the gap in. And then the third dimension, if we think of it like a cube, right? Like that. Then the third dimension is the emotional dimension, right? So what is the emotional reality that needs to change across each of these areas, right? So you're going to see how we do this if you download the script, right? But it's going to be like, cool, so you want to go from point A to point B? Great, right? What would be the emotionally best part about that? Or, what would that mean for you, right? It's not just about what they want to change, it's about why they want to change it. Okay. So you're going to stretch their gap in 3D. So they realize it's not just I have to walk from point A to point B. It's, oh my God, I have this massive mountain and volume of space that I need to cross. How am I ever going to do that? Right. That's something that you really need. If you can get good at, can have a hugely impactful, positive impact on your conversions when you're able to stretch the gap in 3D. It's not just about saying there's one problem. What are the multiple problem sets? How far do we want to go? And why do we want to solve these? What is the real underlying emotional portion of why that would be a big deal to change for them? Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create a consensual collaboration. Consensual, right? What do we mean by that? Well, oftentimes when people start selling their stuff and it's like, cool, so this is all of the, if we look here, these are all the things that we want to change. Great, right? That's fantastic. We want to change all of these things, and now we have a clear picture of what we want to change and why, right? And you kind of recap and you evaluate and you say, yeah, I understand what you're going for. I understand kind of where you need help. Then it comes time to be like, cool. So what I tell you about what I do, and then it's just a one-way conversation. There was this lovely conversation back and forth where you were asking questions and they were answering and you were getting to the bottom of something. And then it comes time to talk about your stuff, and it's just a one-way pitch. And the person, won't interrupt you, and then they might get confused, but there's no feedback on whether they're kind of able to understand what you're talking about and how this might be relevant or how that might be relevant. And you're not tailoring any part of your offer to what they're looking for. It's just like this rehearsed pitch around here's what my thing is, right? And that does a couple of things, right? Number one, it's hard to interrupt, and it doesn't do a good job of explaining the specific tangible value that your offer can bring to the table for the specific problem set you've spoken to the person about. But number two, it kind of communicates, hey, you are exactly the same as everyone else, and I'm just going to give you my pitch, right? And it's also a push-based strategy, right? It is not at all a collaborative approach where you're helping the person get clear about what they need to know to make a decision about buying from you. It's just, I'm going to ram my pitch down your throat. And what happens usually? You get pushback, right? What you want to be doing here in your entire sales game plan call is creating a consensual collaboration. And when it comes time to be talking about your stuff, invite the person essentially to be talking, asking questions about how you're going to help them get the outcome and the results, right? Again, if you're looking for specific scripts, check out the download. The link is below in the description of this video, or it's going to be below this video if you're watching the recording, okay? And then last but not least, you're going to start the party on the call, essentially, right? There's a lot of controversy. Somehow I don't understand why, around like, should I take the money on the call? There's some people that say never take the money on the call. There's certain people that say always take the money on the call. And they're like ethical reasons to do one or the other. I'm a big fan of saying start the party on the call, try and take the money on the call, right? But if the person isn't ready or able to give you the money on the call, don't push for it, right? It's a party, it's the start of a collaboration, it's the start of something exciting. You're going to collect the cash when the person starts the service anyway. But if you can collect it right now to close the deal, go ahead and do it, right? And there's a couple of scripts on how to do that if you're feeling awkward about it. If you're uncomfortable about asking and taking money on the phone, I would say two things, right? Number one, don't let your preconceptions about what you would prefer on the call to dictate what the preference of your market and prospects may be, right? If the person's comfortable giving you the money on the call, take the money on the call, close the deal, get the person started, and start building momentum as soon as possible. If you feel it's unethical to be taking high sums of money on the phone, without giving the person space and time to think, I would just look in the mirror and ask and say, well, why is that the case? If the person's ready to get started, the person's ready to get started. It may be that the reaction you're having is because of a push-based strategy you might have experienced yourself in the past, or you feel that you're being pushy, right? If that's the case, okay, let's adjust there. But if the person is ready to get started and you've invited them in and they're ready to get started, I would say get in the practice of closing the deal and getting them set up in the system as quickly as possible. But start the party on the call, right? If they're ready to get rocking, get them rocking, right? There's no point in, like, if you're here to solve a problem, with not trying to get that problem solved as quickly and as efficiently and effectively as possible. All right. So that's pretty much it, right? If you're watching the recording, love to hear below this video. What was the thing that you found most useful about going through this training specifically, right? If you are looking again for the script that walks you through these principles and so you can map what we've talked about, go below this video, click the button, click the link, opt in for the game plan call. You can get a copy of the exact version of the document I use when I'm on the calls myself, which I also use to train my private clients on how to do these calls, right? Uh, and that's pretty much it. Go below the video right now, grab it. This has been Ross O'Loughlin. Delighted you joined us for the